But they say the governor appoints people on the board. Okay, that's true. That's true. But doesn't all governor appointees go to the Senate? Because they do. So that means either we have senators that is incompetent to get people placed on the board that represents their area, or they're comfortable with it. Now, I'm going to give examples of board placement right now. It takes 3 votes to pass something. You have 2 representatives at least supposed to represent the east side. One person himself, Mr. Tober, the other one is the mayor. So what policy has been suggested on the floor if we didn't have the vote? What policy has been placed on the floor? What we do have when it comes to policy? None. So again, the community allows folks to come in here and give you all type of soft talk, and we're too unengaged to actually resource and go to the source. Because we shouldn't allow somebody to tell us this and tell us that, and we're not resourcing. And again, this campaign, that's what we want to do. We want to get ignored. We want to hit Q&As like this. We want to organize people, not just to vote. I don't want to go down there with a whole bunch of votes and no activity. I want to actually go down there like I used to shut stuff down in Cal. We used to take the buses down. I ain't had the chance to actually take the buses down. I mean, I did when I first started. They stopped letting people testify on but we can fix that.
That didn't take long, did it?
So some of the ordinance, all the ordinance I passed have some type of benefit.
It's still going on. It ain't over with yet.
Mute your camera, mute your microphone.
Nonprofit, Ivanhoe, beautiful job of assimilating land. Beautiful job. Potential losing it though, because of politics and ownership over deals. There's a political deal that's on the table. That should be like 30-some%, low off from percent, but it gives like 30% back to the community. I support the development. Subsequently, I found out the executive director hadn't been conducted within the proper timing. Members had been locked out and all types of weird stuff. And the community builders had the chance to buy it. That makes me nervous. I mean, not buy it, part of it, nervous. You tell 90% of the property, you have ownership of all of that, and that means you control all of that. We have several properties in Kansas City that are political. Why you can't build off 18th Line. Parade Park, we mentioned that, everybody knows Parade Park. But what people weren't talking about is that Parade Park was the first black co-op, meaning people that lived there have ownership or supposed to have ownership over their property. And then we, as a community, allow the city to change the distance, allow developers to develop the senior citizens to live there on the historically co-op with no community benefit agreement. And that goes back to y'all elected. Because the people that y'all elected to be competent and aggressive enough to make sure the agreement and understanding with there, meaning community understanding with it, there's community benefits agreements. Community benefits agreements would be anything that goes back to the community that comes off of the development. If you'll see community CPAs in North Kansas City, you'll see them everywhere where they get tax incentives, etc. This is what my obligation is. We did that with soccer. But we don't do that with ours, and that is our fault. And so, I'm going to bring Sheri up here, to vent a little bit for all my opinion, is righteous, but I only went to a small amount of money. And again, y'all can ask anything that makes me scared of where y'all at. But all of this is our fault, bro. School district just started.
I want to bring to everybody's attention, there's a few things that you talked about that I'm going to have some direct attention with. One, there's been probably over $100 million spent along Prospect Avenue. Everything from gas lines being redone. We talked about the bus system. Telephone Brown, that's an area who happens to be my old Boy Scout. And I say that to say, I have very little respect for him as an individual. And it's unfortunate that I have to say that. It just so happens that he is co-owner, probably majority owner of the civil engineering firm, which I too work for a civil engineering firm that was started by my uncle. And so we go after work. Sometimes as competitors, working with people, go after grants, we go after projects together. And it came to a point where we felt like his beliefs on what my uncle's beliefs are. So it's part of ways. But it has been challenging to keep competing against him. And I do recognize nobody has done more work on these companies. And if you see guys, you guys, I got another thing. You guys know what surveyors do? You know what a surveyor looks like when you're out on the street for a survey?
The tripods come up with them.
They all up and down Prospect. If there's a survey company on Prospect, it's his company.
Yeah, it's over with.
And you see it time and time and time again. And they'll survey things 2 or 3 times for different projects, and they already got it. You know, they really don't have to send anybody out to survey it. But, you know, he gets to work. And that's one of the companies that we're really looking at, trying to really start asking some questions. Why we never even get shortlisted. So you say 5 companies, the bid on the project, they break it down to 3.
Spending him, I know how I can spend. You can't compete against. Not that they can't work. We're talking about a small network that controls more than you know. I'm talking about the white community. You got white community, you got black community, and then you got Latino. All 3 of these communities in Kansas City have been more than control. I'm at large. I'm in the Latino area, but it's fine by us, but I make it remain here. But who's benefiting and who's not benefiting. North Kansas City is isolated, and then you have the diversity issue and intermixing issue, right? But stand where he's at right here. It was in the paper with myself and Councilman Robinson, I believe last year, maybe a little longer than that, but around last year, that we believe there was a conflict of interest. Telephone Brown works for the city, is a paid consultant for the city. Then he's also on private contracts, is what I mean by you can't fit. While I'm already in the group, you trying to compete with me outside the group, it makes it almost impossible. Let's go back to 8. My issue that I believe is a conflict is that you're hired from the city, and then you also working with some of these other people on their project. Now I'm gonna hit you with the pavilion that was in the paper about a week ago. There was a pavilion on 18th and Vine, they were talking, we're gonna do this pavilion that day. What they didn't mention was Mr. Gates, about 15 years ago, put his own money aside when he started doing the YMCA, to do the YMCA and a pavilion, statue, and all this other stuff. When I got on the council, I went to them like, hey, told them I was gonna help with the pavilion, issues on 18th and Vine, and want to shut down the street. But why didn't I get that done? Because they had to get approved by telling Pearl Brown, come. So I didn't get that shit to come back to I didn't get that to come back to me until last week. Right? And that's because I blew up in the meeting and some other stuff. And we have some other help on it. I go into detail on like that. Once it's always done. But it should be some different movement on it, because that's something that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't have a consultant that's paid by the city that also approve projects on the city. So if I've been on the council There's been several requests to buy property off 18, rent property out there. Nobody's been there for rent, except for the car. Because I don't think they actually rented it. But it's even funny, because it used to be a art studio that a whole bunch of people wanted to buy. Nah, man, I got emails. But they're like, dude, we got our own money. No city dollars. We'll put our own business in there. We don't even want this. We only want to alter the building. We want to bring the stuff in. Denied. Then we sell 18 miles for $1. But remember, I just told you about Prairie Park. So we're building senior citizen facilities in Prairie Park. And you have a private developer that's building a hotel. Why would we need to give all of this? Because doesn't development spur economic activity? Developer that we saw, so this is all, I haven't cut this video up. They did storefronts and access to small business. And then committee I passed, where's the money gonna come from? The city got a great program. You know the city ain't got no small business program. So basically, we passed something that said that you will be obligated to provide spaces if we provide funding. But we ain't got funding, so Tyrone don't own nothing. T good. And T know I had it when he made an agreement with me. That's why he made an agreement with me. As long as you pay for it, homie, I got you. Don't pay for it, I do what I want to, right? You say the property. Well, whose property is it? For years we talked about 18 Divine subsidized by the city, because it was still it. $600,000 third district pilot money went to the building across the street, all against that. Because $600,000 for a lot. We got about 5, 6 kids in here. $600,000 to box in the building like this. They can actually do it for them. That's not what we did down there. We box it in. Why do we box it in? To make it attractive to the developer. But then we put buildings for $1 to a developer. So why do we need to put $600,000 more if we gave it to a developer for $1 to develop, does what the developer needed? So why are we doing $600,000 in the building that's not going to be utilized? Because it can't be used. No, it's a white box. You white box it in. So if you white box it in, that means you put box in basically. Well, why would you do that? Like what? You hire me to do something now you're not going to do. Go ahead and build me a room. Not nice.
My question is, like we got to do it at 16, and every time I hear this, I just think it's different. 18 Divine never belonged to black folks. So it's always been owned by the city and Jews. We don't own it now. The city owns most of that property. So why are they selling us this building that 18th Street belongs to us?
I would say, I would say they're talking about the historical significance of it and also the tenant.
Like one time it was.
It never was
Right.
like,
Some
we occupied just like we do.
some blacks, there used to be a barber shop down there, they had to buy him out. The, El Capitan.
Mm-hmm. Up there.
We occupied 16th Street. The business was, no, the business was there. Nobody denied black business. I'm saying black ownership is the difference between with the building, a business inside a building that's already owned by someone else. I grew up on 16th Street. Toby Market was there. Liquor stores with Matt Law, Henry owned half of that street where
The whole street, pretty much all
that's what they owned. That's a building. We occupied those places. Then when the riots came in, that's why most of them burned down, was because we didn't own none of that. Toby Market stayed because he fed the community. But my whole question is, 27th Street has just as much history as 18th Divine, because that was our dividing line.
It doesn't
Yeah.
makes that property so attractive. That's why one of the things that, you know, and I go back to the building on the corner. When I started back working for my engineering firm, I was sent down to Texas to work with the Texas Association of African American Change Economists. So I'm sitting in my hotel room, and I'm like, what the heck in Kansas City? Found out who was on the board of Black Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Webster, but unfortunately, the president was Chuck Burke with Jim's disposal. At that time, the Black Chamber was still on that building. They had a note on it. Chuck Burke was paying the note on it, like $500 something a month. He felt somewhat obligated because the work that the chamber did allowed him to become a millionaire. Because the chamber lobbied for minority business participation for trash reception, trash business. That's what he does. Made him a millionaire. And so, as the group started meeting back up when I started talking to people, and one of the things that I said, the last thing you guys should do is sell that building on the corner. That is the gateway into 18th and Vine, the Jazz District. Chuck Burke went behind everybody's back, sold the building back to the city because Troy Schulte wanted to tear it down because Ollie Gates wanted a fountain there. So when you leave and in the backdrop is the YMCA that he put that money to, which now I believe is owned by the baseball, Negro League Baseball. And so I'm gonna say that black folks around here are doing black folks dirty. When he talks about Ivanhoe, right now, I will say this, and even if Ivanhoe went under, you ain't gotta worry about you deal ever getting. We live elected member of the Ivanhoe board, voted out everybody except 2 people last December. We terminated the director, and every week we find an outside. Now I'll ask you guys, does anybody in here, have you ever heard of an organization called Greater Impact? Greater Impact. He talks about grand knowledge. Combat. The previous director signed off just to be the fiduciary agent, which is basically having money passed through to another organization. This church down here on 38th and Wabash, that was never really finished, and I guess the pastor passed away. Well, the guy, no. The guy who started it passed away. Now, Brandon Mills works for Ad Hoc and got a combat grant last year. He took as Greater Impact to do work in the hospital, which is Ivanhoe, this Oak Park. They work with police officers and they deal with trauma and some other things. Well, when I first came on board last December, I started going through bank statements. That was a name that popped up, nobody knew about. And so, present day, come to find out, they had a $50,000 grant to do work in this community. And from there, finding out stuff, talking to combat, right now, going before the legislators, another grant for $312,000 for them. I talked to Vince Ortega, who is the combat director, and I told him that Ivanhoe, as long as I'm here, is not going to be utilized and pimped for all the work that they've done, whether some people see it as good, some people see it as bad, since the mid-90s. And I was doing the same work for AmeriCorps in Blue Hill. Alan Young and his wife started this group back on crime. And I told them, we're not going to allow this name to be used to enrich somebody who does not live in this community pockets. This guy has his organization, which is nothing. They gave him all, they're trying to give him all this money. And his wife is a therapist, so he brings her home board. She's a licensed therapist. Who knows she has a credential? But I told him that we will not let this grant go forward. And we have a meeting Thursday. And we're going to list out, what our expectations of what it's going to look like. Now, I briefly talked to the guy. He tried to rush me and trying to pressure me to go ahead and have the stuff signed and sent over to combat and stuff. But trust me, you guys are going to see some help on this time as it relates to that grant. Because as I told Mr. Ortega, I said, part of the focus should be empowering the people who live in the community to be able to take care of themselves. And just having people come in, dip in and out And especially because this guy already has a full-time job at Amazon. How are you gonna do that? How are you gonna work 40 hours here and you're already working 40 hours there? Then you're a pastor at the church. So, he's not doing it anymore. Because right now.
I know what I'm saying is, when we talk about working, you know, you may have the name titles, but they're not working.
No, but here's the thing. If you're getting a salary from my half, that's full time.
Yeah.
I say you work full time.
No, but I'm saying you working.
I don't care. Make sure he puts in the time. I'm just saying because he's a full time employee, Ken, you got 16 hours in a day. You're not going to do the work and get paid for the same work twice. When I have some oversight. So.
I think if we focus on taking that mentality that you have.
Well, I mean, it's not knowing. That's why I just asked everybody. Has anybody heard of regular? Everybody said no, and that's what I told you. And they're sending me over reports. I said, for 6 months, this is from June to December, they've been running programming. Nobody in the community knows about it.
And that, come on.
Yeah.
And what we want is people that have understanding like in the area. Like,
But that doesn't carry.
Because there's certain things that said, I want to sit down. 18 and more by not being on. That's what he is. Also, funding.
Right.
Even to 18th Vine and Friday, 27th Street, 25th Street is not. True, but not. Why is it 23rd? Right. Why is it 29th Street? It's easy to take governmental dollars and the funding, even if it's, sorry. It's easier to take governmental dollars and say, oh man, survey, this thing everyone's going to do. Because it allows me to call off or whatever the survey is with sidewalls or potential development or what we could do in the year 3030 if we redesign the whole inner city. This is why the several plans about redesigning the city. But again, it falls on the shoulders. It falls on our shoulders, but not wondering, questioning, and stopping repetitive spending and other kind of taxes. That's why 18th Devon has it. 27th Street is not, because there's nothing to hide it. I got built some on 27th Street, 39th Street, but 39th Street, there's no reason that old building, creator looking thing isn't an entertaining attraction.
But they just want some. They want so much money for property. I mean, value of property as far as perspective has decreased enormously. I think I want to
say this about again, yes, the city has bonds. The city has the ability to do a whole bunch. So if you look at 47th Street Hotel, we did some stuff over here, buying the property, going, everything, so the hotels get in there, the hotels get itself. And most of this hybrid land bank county property, again, is ours. It's not the county, but the county incorporates the city. Right? The city is part of the state, part of the county. It's all tax dollars, individual privatized dollars at all. We talk about property, house, and knowledge stuff. The issue is us understanding the accessibility and then moving people out of the way. So most of the entities that we talk about, they've been out here. I'm sitting down. Now, school district has been given to you every year. Black community is free in Canada. Every year. Every year I go, most people go, no, every year they come back and it's like, yo,
We still got 5 superintendents on paper.
no. And the last one they ran out, right? But all our schools are called.
Those
Yeah.
little taxes,
We know, right? The taxes were up. Y'all know y'all tax. All of it. A member of prayer, right? I know that. I didn't know that. What about, the executive runs the county, right? The mayor runs the city. I'm the only black elected official that was a member of 3 minutes. I can vote free. So what do I say? So when we talk about containing in captivity, we can keep allowing people that Daniel came in front of us and tell us they fight for freedom. But they don't know these folks. I don't see them. I don't see them, they don't live on it. This makes you forward. But if you let me keep in your car, you don't know who I am, and I drive off of that shit, you can't be mad. Really? Who's your car? Same dude come here now. Now, if you outside, I don't know. My car, can't go around the block. You know, where are you going? These have some type of skin in there. So being around real, it's campaign, I'm trying to skin again. Talking to a whole lot of people have been doing $200,000 they're going to bring it back to facts. There is no issue with development in the city, so we get, and it's the same issue. I've been told 30-person project. He mentioned the building off 18th Mile being rebuilt. He didn't mention KUAW, because he got it right. Nobody talks about Maxwell still in a 30-person project. They got a growth. You mentioned 18th Mile, I have it like this. Nobody trips off, and none of these have money. But it's all taxpayer subsidized money. So again, either we stop cleaning fools and allowing people to gain stuff in front of us, with no explanation, or we organize, and we give them our expectations and make sure that
I put it down, put it down.
I gotta say that.
Because, we were supposed to do the fact of life. We don't participate in the whole part. My business is in the part, right? Down on 30, we don't get invited to the meetings of the neighborhood. But I'm
Everybody's gonna get it
right. Anyway, no. But I'm very interested in the gentleman at the church over there.
We used to Saturday until 5.
So we
That's our first one here.
When you come. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely asked for support to get involved and stuff. But we didn't know nothing about, when we probably participate. Right,
I don't know that.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I said, we want to go, yeah, so we be there.
Y'all need to show up first.
Yeah, we don't know, I know.
And I'm gonna say this, and Terry takes the mic. Ron talked about it, he wasn't gonna let them take it over while he's on watch. We gotta get out of the top.
Yeah.
He's holding that area down, we need to be down there with
We'll
him.
be here.
Just because we know it's an issue, you shouldn't be holding it down by yourself.
Well, I'll tell you, the people are gone.
No, I know.
Not only that, the attorney, as a board member, is the in-house counsel for community buildings.
That was just a coincidence.
Well, right now, she's kind of scared because I did now, the board for attorney in the state of Missouri, and so they're going to have to come here and finish. It already has spent for that.
Sure, how?
Another thing,
The new are, minimum 2001.
right here.
Different. And anybody can give them.
Okay.
Well, Carol Saturday, the supervisor got this. My mother actually was not involved in the project that they got over there for environmental, so I was there. Because I talked to them.
She does.
Well, to introduce myself, those people who don't know me, my name is Sheri Curtis Hall. My information is on your table. I'm also running for 3rd district. I'm running in district. We're here to hear the differential between in district and at large. The at large candidate can be voted on by the entire city. In district can only be voted on by people inside the 3rd district. But continuing the conversation we just had because it's good. The reason I wanted to jump in on the part where you're talking about grants, so you can't own a nonprofit. So I run a couple of nonprofits and I own another business, right? That don't make me rich, it just makes me work for myself, right? And working for yourself means that you work for everybody that you serve. So I work for you. I'm kind of used to working for everybody else. But when you have a nonprofit and you apply for grants, especially governmental grants, there are lines that you have to qualify under, especially when you're writing your budget. They ask you who is your PI/PD. That's your principal investigator or principal director of your program. So when we're talking about how is he going to be able to work here 40 hours and there 40 hours, the issue in that is when the grant money is written as the PIPD. And if the PIPD isn't doing the job, the grant can get snatched. So what happens is, if there is justification to snatch money from you, that means not only is the person not doing the job, but now the money is being taken away from the neighborhood. And that's the other part of the reason why this is so important. Because the neighborhood needs the money. So you need oversight in order to keep the funds going where they're supposed to go. I'm a person who believes I don't just want better, I want everything that we're supposed to have. You can get better if you want to. My example is domestic violence, right? I just want to do better. Okay, so that means he didn't have a job before, now he goes to work and he still puts his hand inside your head. Okay, so he's doing better. You still want the government to go inside your head, or you want everything you want, you're supposed to have? You have to ask yourself these questions, right? But I'm right. Experience. And the lived experience, just to give you a breakdown of that term, lived experience is actually a mental health, right? It is a term used by people who have experienced trauma or are consumers of mental health services. You have lived experience in the system. I lived in the 3rd district pretty much my whole life. I have lived experience in the system. Not only do I have 3rd district lived experience, I've had 3rd district issues. I've also had 3rd district visits, right? So the question I have for you guys is, what do you want to see? What are you looking for? I can say everything that I believe in. I can talk a whole lot. I'm both. But I'm actually here with 2 ears and 1 mouth. So what exactly do you want to see? What are your concerns? Because it's the meeting room, right?
Education, you know, that's.
Gotcha. So let's go backwards. What do you want to see with gun control?
Stick to the laws is already on the books. Education comes with gun control. You don't educate the person about, you can't control it. That's first. First.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Then the economics. This baby, I won't have to be able to take care of her grandkids.
Okay. So starting at gun control, with regards to the amounts of issues that happen in our section,
I don't want to give them up.
I'm about to say half the people don't even, they not abiding.
Gun control doesn't mean not happening.
I know.
You know,
Contrary to popular belief, melanated people do have Second Amendment rights. I exercise mine.
so do I. Trust. Oh, yeah. That's speaking on your behalf.
I like the way she paused and has
Continue.
Yes. And the economics, everything that y'all saying, I totally agree with. Ownership. You know what I'm saying? And along with the city dollars and government dollars, there's enough people in the room that $50 a month can alleviate some of the issues that we're talking about.
So with regards to the economics, jumping back into the previous conversation, have you ever heard of urban entrepreneurs? So I'm not talking about it in the sense that with what we are now. If you look at the history of urban planning and development, your urban entrepreneurs were people who came and sold cities, right? They sought out land, they looked at it, saw what could be done with it, It's probably part of the reason that we're on a grid line now, right? And they went out and sold that city. They sold the heck out of it. They sold the heck out of Chicago. You know what I'm saying? We can't even deny it. They sold New York. They sold, and what by sold, what I meant is attracting people to come to do business, to buy, to do things. So the question that was presented before, what makes 27th Street or even 29th Street different than 18th and Vine? Urban entrepreneurs. Who is selling it?
They all got it. Talk through it.
No, we sell what's currently there. We don't sell what could possibly be for our neighborhood.
But I'm
We don't
not
sell
gonna
what
put
we
an
want.
exit somewhere where I know I can't make no money.
Yeah, just jump in real quick. Nah, I'm not help her out on this one, not because she doesn't know separation, but I want to make sure people understand separation. So when you talk about local governance, laws are outside of our purview. Gun control, can't do nothing about it. So y'all hear the various mayors over the years talking about gun control and this is what we don't do. State law, homie. Can't do that. Not like chapter 84, where I gave the school citizens. When you talk about economic development, you get it, and that's what made me want to jump in with her. When you talk about access to highway, the only areas that has a majority of highway exodus is where east side. And then the 6 will be subsequently next. So when you talk about all of the highways and how they connect, they come through here. So the sprawled economic density, we need to actually sprawl development on the east side. Now it doesn't take magic to do development on the east side because most of the brownfields, one with she was talking about off of 18th and Vine with the contamination that came out of the paint shops and all that good stuff. Brownfield. A lot of the east side is a central business district of the city. So all of that can be tied to those simple partnerships in collaboration with elected officials. And it's extremely important that we have elected officials that can move independently.
Thank you. And we're back. So if you look at the back of the card, you see something on there called social determinants. Social determinants, because I'm trying to actually figure out how to condense that message, right? So social determinants are your factors for health in this area or in every area, right? It includes the way that you make your money. It includes where you live. It includes how your neighborhoods look. All of that affects your mental health. So how much is our mental health affected when we're not able to turn the dollar in our own community? So the reason that you even brought up economics even goes way deeper. It goes into a public health issue.
I feel you, I can even get to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So good, yeah, I feel you.
So for me, with economics even being a public health issue, that makes it all the more important for people to be able, because we have all these, people like, yeah, we're going to teach you how to write grants, we're going to teach you how to be, you should be an entrepreneur, and then we don't support them. There's no support, there's no infrastructure for that. So for me, that is one of the most important things and paramount for elected officials to really support the way that people support themselves. The way that we turn the dollar in our neighborhoods. I'm gonna tell you from my own personal experience, one, as a person who runs nonprofits, I applied for CDBG dollars.
Ooh.
When I say lived experience, I mean that thing, right? Applying for CDBG dollars a couple times to get that. There is a thing that I like to say is access granted. I want to see some transparency in that process. I want to see why. When I call and ask for feedback of why I didn't get it, why I can do better, what's happened this time, because CDBG dollars is still my money. I'm just applying for them to come back to me to serve the community. What happened? Why? Right? One of the nonprofits that I run, Public Power, is a mental health and arts nonprofit. So when I'm applying to put mental health programming in the neighborhood. I'm applying to put arts and wellness in the neighborhood because especially Black folks, our griot is part of our health, being able to tell our story, right? All the things I've applied for, it's like what it says in the Bible, a prophet is not appreciated in their own home, right? All right, my money comes from Sam. the federal government. My money does not, the bulk of my money comes from federal government outside of, let me mention, because I am being recorded, you know, thank you, Health Board Foundation, they do their thing. There's a few people who, you know, foundations who do the thing, but as far as applying to the city and getting that funding, there's no transparency in the process. That's a problem. Because there's lots of people who, these smaller nonprofits, who would really potentially work for the city, do the work, we collaborate together, write each other in grants and things like that. But it's almost like it's not almost like this, very literally, we are wasting employee hours writing grants, and especially CDBG. You know, my last CDBG application, I think, was 75 pages. You have to make 4 copies of it, sign it yourself, and come in and hand deliver it.
Very familiar with the process.
So they're paying a director to make copies and hand deliver a thing that gets turned in every time.
Administrative costs, it's always got to be working.
Always got to be worked in, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
There's a lot of programs that could be here and thriving and allow our city to thrive if we have some sort of oversight and transparency in the process of when we're giving out these funds. Because, well, where did the funds go? Who have them? It can be done with. It's a question. And it's not even a necessary, like, you know, when we do, let's say, impact reporting. What is the impact of these organizations that are getting these funds?
Good question.
It's always a question to deal with that, right? But with regards to social determinants and improvement, especially with regards to the east side, that's what I'm about, because I've experienced it. Because I continue to watch people experience it, because I watch people I serve have to choose for getting their medication they like on. I watch people I serve not be able to afford mental health and therapy. I watch people I serve, I really want to get out, but I can't afford to get into the show wherever. And that may seem small to some, but for people, when you have worked 40 to 60 hours, I'm working full-time plus overtime, and I just can't even afford to get my kids dinner. It's a problem. It's a problem.
Well, although I think, you know, people in different organizations doing things, we always need to make that connection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That organizations often work in silos, right? I can use an example of a grant that happened in Wycombe. There was a grant that was put out, $300,000, that wanted 16, if I'm remembering correctly, don't quote me because I could be lying. I believe it was 16 organizations to come in together as a unit to work towards the betterment of conditions in Wycombe, right? And that grant, they made the organizations report back. This is what's going on. These are the initiatives. This is what we're doing. This is what we're putting out there. There was one lead agency and then 16 others to come in together. That agency is still up and going. Those programs are still up and working. Why can't the city do the same? Because we could not have transparency in our process. Right? It would force these silos to work together, because they stated specifically, we don't want to see the same old people. Yeah, some of y'all are the same people, but get out here and get these other organizations. And I know I applied as a lead of that organization, as a lead on that grant, but I also went in under hey, what we doing though? You know, when we talk about, hey, we're fostering business and we want some business, that's great. But when do these businesses work together, and what are we asking of them in these monies that we're giving them to the city? So, for me,
None of your business, girl.
For me.
Sound like you know.
that's an issue that I see. Other things that I've seen, even as running business, attempting to rent buildings to run businesses in the third district.
But you got one watch. So handle your business.
Attempting to rent a building here, buildings owned by the city. Why don't we have access? Why? Attempting to buy buildings. I'm not even going to get into the whole discussion of the whole land bank and trying to find the application fees and this, that, and other. It's just, for me, I need some access to be granted so that I can see what's going on with my tax dollars. I don't know about everybody
I'm
else.
gonna do everything I can to get you.
I appreciate that. Anybody else have questions about me? I'm Capricorn. You behind the camera, you try to keep it shut real quiet. Any other questions? Well, feel free. That's all right. Feel free to contact me. The QR code on the back of the card is where you can find more information about me. You can contact me. You can come to the next event. I'm actually having a campaign kickoff on Friday at the Lincoln Building from 6 to 8. So, you know, come have fun with me, come talk.
So St. Mark's Child Development Center, right?
Yes. Yes, sir. Right up the street,
Yeah.
corner from Inkwell Cafe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Any questions, Booker? Thank you.
You got hands together. All right, I know because, yeah. So if y'all want to have separate conversations, I'm here. At least one of them.